So, ladies and gentlemen, we have Mr. R.C. Bhargav, and as he talks to us how they have been able to make quality a way of life, create this quality ecosystem through their micro, small and medium vendors. I would like to invite Mr. R.C. Bhargava for his talk.
Good evening, and I must confess that after Dr. Shetty's talk, my talk on how to build a supply chain which can integrate into the global value chain sounds like a huge come down, so dry and divorced from the kind of emotions which Dr. Shetty's talk invoked. So you'll have to bear with me, but that is really what I'm afraid is in store for you. Why are we talking of integrating into the global quality chain? The reason is that manufacturers all over the world now face intense competition. And to meet this competition, they need to continuously decrease their costs, improve their quality, and give better value to their customers so that they can compete with other manufacturers. And one of the obvious ways of doing this is to no more restrict the sourcing of your components only within the national boundaries of the country where you're located, but to look at the entire world as a possible source of buying components, subject to the condition that you get these in a way which will help you increase your competitiveness all the time. And the fact that manufacturers all over the world today are looking for global sourcing is what I think persuaded the Quality Council to give this topic to me, that building a world-class supply chain system in India to support integration with global value chain. But the reason why this is happening is very clear. Now, if we can do this in India, then certainly we'll get a very rapid start to the Make in India program, because getting major manufacturers to come to India is going to take time. Setting up their factories will take time. And I believe that what will attract major manufacturers to come to India will be the availability of a very reliable quality value chain, supply chain in India. And as we've seen in the automobile industry, global manufacturers all came to set up manufacturing in India when they realized that India had an industry which could produce almost all components required for the automobile. And I think that will hold true of various other products where we want global manufacturers to come to India. Because without a supply chain, I doubt if you'll get very many manufacturers to come to India. So what do we need to do to make this happen? How do we get to a situation where the supply chain in India is acceptable as part of the global sourcing system of the leading manufacturers of the world? I think that is a task which can only happen if all the agencies, and we'll talk about these agencies as I go along, are all on the same page, all are convinced that Indian component manufacturers, the Indian supply chain, has to become so competitive that they can integrate with the global value chain. And it will not happen if any of these elements which will go into making this happen are not convinced of it or do not do their bit in making it happen. There has to be a total commitment to making this work in India. Now, even in India today, what is it that OEMs want from suppliers? And that is, of course, what any buyer or an OEM wants. You want, obviously, as low cost as possible. You want that the products which you buy will absolutely, consistently, over long periods of time, conform to the specifications which have been given. Please note, I'm not using the word quality. I'm talking of consistent conformity to specifications. Because my definition of quality is a consistent conformity to quality, to the specifications. And the third is that the supplies have to be absolutely reliable, stable, timely. We cannot have situations where suddenly the supplier says that, look, something has happened here, my workers have gone on strike, my power supply has been cut off, or something else has happened, and I can't supply you for 15 days, because that is something which is just not acceptable to a manufacturer. So reliability, consistent conformity to specifications, and low cost is what is required for a supplier to become part of the global value chain. Now, if an OEM finds that his suppliers do not enable him to meet all these three conditions, and as a result he loses his competitiveness, all of us who aspire to be suppliers must realize that the result of that will be that not only will the OEM lose business and profitability, but if the OEM loses business and profitability, we as suppliers will lose business and profitability. There is a very clear interdependence between what happens to the OEM and what happens to the suppliers. And it is as much in the interest of the suppliers as it is of the OEM to ensure that competitiveness in all respects is maintained and improved all the time. That is something which suppliers have to understand, that they are, in a sense, partners and co-journey companions with the OEMs. They are not independent of them. And it's not only them, of course, the workers and everybody else has to realize that. Now, the first question is, are we in India actually in a position to say that we can meet all these conditions which an OEM wants? Can we say that we can give lower cost? Maybe. Maybe in many cases, the component manufacturers can be lower cost. Can we say that we will give consistent adherence to specifications? I don't think too many of our suppliers can say that. Can we say that we will be absolutely reliable in our supplies? I don't think so. I don't think that is at all possible given the various weaknesses in our system. And therefore, while many of us will give all the reasons why these things don't happen and it's outside their control, the fact is that it does not happen. And if it does not happen, irrespective of how good the reasons are for it's not happening, it's still of no interest to the buyer abroad, and you will not integrate with the supply chain. So we have not to look at alibis. We have to look to see what needs to be done to make it happen. Now, who are the main players who can make it happen and who, as I said, all have to work in harmony to make it happen. Clearly, the first is government. In terms of Dr. Shetty talked of policies, I'm also saying there are policies, actions, decisions which government takes because our system is that we are not independent of the government at all. And government is a major, major player in determining all these three aspects of the quality chain in terms of cost, in terms of consistency of quality, in terms of reliability of supply. The second player is the entrepreneur. The entrepreneur is the guy who puts in his money, and he is the one who is running the factory, and he is clearly going to be a major factor in determining the ability to be competitive in terms of global standards. The third player are the workers, because they constitute maybe 70% or more of the workforce of an enterprise, and they are going to be the most important people. Now, in different circumstances, there may be other factors which come in, but let's keep ourselves to these three players. And as I said, unless all three players come on the same page, have the same intentions, the same motivations, the same end objectives, and the desire to make it happen, it will not happen. Now, what do we have to do? What does each one have to do? The government, let's take the first role of government. Government has to, today, determine that it's not just enough to say that we should make in India. It's not enough to say that we will do ease of doing business in India. That's not enough. What is required is a mindset change in the government, which means the political people heading the government, the bureaucracy which runs and which is the instrument of implementing the policies and programs of the government. All of them need a mindset change to understand what it means to enable Indian manufacturers to become internationally competitive and a part of the global value chain. Understand why I'm saying this. Over all these years, and I'm talking from the time we started, let's say, planning in 1950, till almost now, actually, because even though formally that's not true, the system of central control, licenses, permits, and central planning took away the factor of competition from the Indian economy. The absence of competition created a mindset which was not customer-oriented. If there is no competition, it's just almost impossible for manufacturers of anything to be customer-oriented. And all of you who are here, who were here before 1991 or later when things started to change, will remember the kind of goods and products and services which we got and how we got them, and what was the kind of customer service for that. If a government determines what should be produced, how much should be produced, what should be the specifications of what should be produced, where is the customer in that? He is not consulted. It's people sitting in a different bhavan who used to decide what you and I should use and how much of it we should use. And that attitude is still very much there in a lot of people, and that has to change. Socialism gave an attitude that the private sector was not to be trusted, that private sector people making money, becoming rich, was not consistent with the objects of socialism. And government servants, and I have been one of them, we were discouraged from doing things which enabled or in some way helped the private entrepreneur to make more money. And if we are to grow manufacturing, if we are to become competitive, if we have to lower costs, all of these steps are designed to make private sector manufacturers make money. This is again totally contrary to the mindset of a lot of politicians, of a lot of bureaucrats. And unless this changes, I'm afraid our hope of quickly integrating in the global value chain is going to run into difficulties. It will not happen. It applies to entrepreneurs because the absence of competition, I said, created a different attitude with them. It became more cost-plus manufacturing rather than cost-down manufacturing. Not many companies in India even today, unless they are faced with competition, are too worried about costs and how to lower costs. Don't monitor productivity regularly. Don't monitor what cost reductions are happening every year. Those are not part of the program. Usually, prices are increased according to increase in costs. That has to change. Labor was looked after by government because if a company started to become sick or became sick, the government, in most cases, nationalized the company and took over the company, and the labor didn't suffer when the company became sick because it was not competitive, it made poor quality goods, and was not working properly. So all of these factors need to change. A mindset change is required in all these three areas for people to understand what is required if we are going to go forward, create jobs, increase manufacturing, become part of the global value chain. Government policies, therefore, will need to change according to this. We have already talked about lowering costs. I think there's inadequate realization in a lot of levels that time is money. In India, in so many cases we see where delays take place which really should not take place and which considerably add to the cost of production. I think it doesn't require elaboration. We all know the value. Anybody who's doing business understands the value of time. But decision-making, approving, giving sanctions, giving permissions, having to do 120 sanctions when perhaps 10 should be enough, is all something which takes time and therefore adds to cost and takes away from the possibility of integrating in the global value chain. Why do government people do this? Because the system has been built in such a manner today. The legal system has been built in such a manner that anybody who takes decisions which look to be in the interest of a private party could very well fall foul of the Prevention of Corruption Act and become subject of a CBI or a vigilance inquiry. We need to make legal changes to enable civil servants to take decisions without this fear of getting caught in helping people to improve their manufacturing and taking quick decisions. The whole system of evaluation of civil service work is based on not making a mistake. It's not based on producing results. And I think that's another major change which needs to be made in the whole system, where the political heads have to make a change, where the value results, not process, not procedure, not paperwork. Because our system values all of these much more than results. And most people in senior positions are never held accountable for results. And if they're not accountable, people below them are not accountable. And that is what leads to lack of accountability down the line. So we don't enforce laws, we don't enforce rules, everything goes. Discipline is something which is only a word. It's not something which we worry about. And we've seen this happening in so many walks of life, where the discipline, adherence to certain codes of behavior, certain rules is not considered important by anybody. You can't get quality if you do that. input costs for industries, whether it's electricity, whether it's water, whether it's any other input costs, is priced much higher than the same input when it is priced for other sectors, including domestic and agriculture. If manufacturing is to become competitive, it cannot be used to subsidize other segments of the economy. Manufacturing can at best pay the actual cost for every equalized cost. It cannot pay and help on the grounds that these are poor people, and therefore the industrialists can afford to pay money to the poor people so that they become a little bit better off, because then the industrialist will not grow. And that is what's happened in India. We have not grown because industry has not been competitive. The tax regime. Sure, we should all pay taxes, and that applies to entrepreneurs and all of us. But at the same time, the tax regime should also work in a transparent and fair manner. Both sides have to work on this to make it happen. Infrastructure. Costs go up enormously because of infrastructure shortages. If I have to put in captive power, and in many cases captive power runs on diesel, it's an enormous cost. In Maruti, we run captive power in terms of gas turbines. The gas is priced so high that power generated by us costs us 17 rupees a unit. And then with that kind of power cost, industry is supposed to be competitive. So these are all factors which relate to government. In terms of quality, it's something which I have been raising for some time now. And it's based on our experience with our Tier 1 and Tier 2 vendors. Two major factors come in. One is that, by and large, at least in this part of the industry, to a larger extent, to a certain extent, in a smaller extent to other parts of the country, we use contract labor for production. Contract labor for production, to my mind, is counterproductive to building a quality culture, an improvement culture, a low-cost culture, a reliability culture, because the contract worker has no commitment. There's no learning, there's no accumulation of skills, because the contract worker works for some time and then he's let go, somebody else comes and works. And when you don't build skills, you don't accumulate skills, you don't motivate, you don't give career prospects, how do you expect that worker to be part of a continuous improvement process, whether it's in quality or cost? How can it happen? And our own experience has shown that in the Gurgaon plants, there has been an enormous improvement in quality. Every year, the workers make suggestions which save us hundreds of crores of rupees, and all because they feel that they are partners in the enterprise. And that's a culture which needs to be brought in. The second part of it is this policy of small scale and micro industries. We have defined the industries in terms of capital investment. I have nothing against small scale. I think in a lot of areas, small scale industries are fine. But when it comes to volume manufacture of modern manufacturing industries, I believe it is impossible for small scale industries to manufacture with the conditions which we have been discussing within the financial limits which have been prescribed. And I wish all of those who are trying to improve the output of Tier 2 vendors and Tier 1 vendors would please do a little exercise to work out whether with the investment limits which are prescribed, it's actually possible for a vendor, whether it's Tier 1 or Tier 2, doesn't matter, to put in the kind of equipment, buy the kind of toolings, buy the maintenance equipment, buy the inspection equipment, employ skilled manpower which is required for producing consistent quality and making improvements as you go along. Is it possible? Please look at it. You'll find that it just is not feasible. But that policy, along with the policy of labor-intensive manufacturing, in today's requirements of consistent quality, in most areas of manufacturing, it is impossible to do this purely by manual work. You have to have a certain degree of automation. It can be low-cost automation, but without that, you cannot actually produce the kind of products which today the buyers in the world want. And that's something else which we need to understand, that you cannot integrate into the global value chain unless it's not only the software part of it, which the Quality Council or Maruti's Center for Excellence and all of these are trying to do. Along with that, the policies and the hardware must support the entire quality manufacturing system. I think we do it compartmentally, we don't do it as a whole. The suppliers, the reliability of supplies depends so much on infrastructure, inputs of power, the logistical arrangements, the labor laws so they don't get flash strikes and things. Otherwise, you will have disruptions in supply, and we've seen that happening so many times with so many companies that without notice, something happens and supplies get disrupted. Or, as I said, they have to put in their own alternative infrastructure, and that is so costly. So the infrastructure part is something else which we need to look at. Entrepreneurs in India, they are not also, in most cases today, with the kind of mindset which is required to integrate into the global value chain. A large number of companies in India, perhaps over 90%, are promoter-owned and managed. And a large percentage of these promoter-owned and managed companies are run primarily as if they are only for the benefit of the entrepreneur and his family. The concerns of the other stakeholders are rarely taken into account in determining policies and rules and regulations of how the company should work. As I've been saying, it is not possible to get consistent quality, continuous improvement in costs, and involvement of the workers in making this happen unless they feel that they are partners in the enterprise, that they have a stake in making a contribution. Because don't expect workers to keep making improvements and making suggestions if they don't see doing that does any good to them. If they see that neither in financial terms nor in terms of career they progress, it's not likely that very many of them will be motivated to become partners in the industry in making it more and more competitive. That's human nature. It doesn't happen that way. So I think entrepreneurs have to understand that. They have to create this genuine partnership. Their accounting systems need to become totally transparent. They will not get money from banks. They will not be able to raise money in the stock market unless there is a degree of transparency in the accounting systems. Along with that, of course, they must be willing to dilute their holdings if they have to raise money to expand and modernize and put in new technology in their manufacturing processes, which will be required if you want to do volume manufacturing for modern industry. You can't run it in a very low-cost value. Entrepreneurs need to value skills. As I said earlier, we don't value skills because we think it's enough to get untrained, unskilled, uneducated workers to do the work they learn on the job, and that's good enough. It isn't good enough for what we are talking about. And of course, they must buy the right kind of tooling and equipment, because it's not true that low-cost equipment and low-cost tooling leads to good quality or low cost. It's a false myth. The cost of rework, the cost of rejects, the cost of quality, as it is said, is just too high. It will not work. So for all of these to happen, entrepreneur, government, labor, because labor's future depends on the company, all have to get together, recognize what they need to do, and make a joint effort. The OEM is the catalyst. He has to recognize the importance to him of a good quality supply chain. He has to spend a lot of time and resources in building that supply chain by educating the vendors in all areas, in not only technological, but also managerial, HR. He has to spend time on that, teach them the new techniques because he has much greater access to them. The smaller vendors do not have access to the McKinseys and the Accentures of this world. It's the bigger manufacturer who has to bring these skills to them and promote this concept. So to end, I believe that while it is very, very possible and necessary for India to develop supply chains and integrate with the global value system, it's not an easy task. It requires mindset changes. It requires behavior changes. It requires people to give up a certain lifestyle and move to a different lifestyle to promote their companies and to grow their companies rather than to grow their own selves. And if that happens, I believe it can happen. And that's the task, I think, really, which all of us, including the quality circle, should take up. Thank you very much.